What's your favorite? How did you get? When will I be remembered? Was it over? Where did all go? How do we know? Oh, forget it. Soren, Louis, Daniel O'Brien. Two best friends and comedy writers. If there's an answer, they're gonna find it. I think you'll have a great time here. I think you'll have a great time here.
So, hello again, and welcome to another episode of Quick Question with Soren and Daniel, the podcast where two best friends and comedy writers ask each other questions and give each other answers. I am one half of that podcast, senior writer for Last Week Tonight, author of How to Fight Presidents, and last day of school boy Daniel O'Brien, joined as always by my co-host, Mr. Soren Bowie. Soren, say hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm Soren Bowie. I'm a writer for American Dad. And when you say that this is the last day of school, are you referring to the fact that this is the last podcast we have to do before the end of the year? And then we're like, who knows what will happen next year? Maybe we'll be dead.
That's correct. This is the last episode of 2023. 2000 funny glee, whatever we decided this year, whatever we
didn't
dubbed
do
this
one.
year as. We
Oh, shit. We didn't do it. We didn't do a year.
Well, let that be the only mistake we made this year.
Thanks to Rocket Money for supporting our podcast. Rocket Money will quickly and easily identify your subscriptions for you, so you can stop paying for the ones you don't want. Stop throwing your money away. Cancel unwanted subscriptions and manage your expenses the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/QQ.
But yes, for our listeners, this is the last new episode of 2023 for Quick Question. And if you're anything like me, you've heard that announcement. Like podcasts that I listen to, Doughboys and Hollywood Handbook, they've also this week made their announcements that it's their last new episode. And as a listener, it bummed me out to hear, because I'm like, but there's so much time left and there's so many more walks with my dog that I need to listen to my favorite podcasts. But now that I'm saying it, I understand why I can hear those hosts smiling when they say it. It feels good. It feels good knowing that we don't have to record anymore this year.
It is really, it's comforting.
It doesn't mean Dan and I don't talk to Soren. Yeah. And we'll still have we still chat and update each other on our lives. But
listen, there's all kinds of stuff we can't talk to each other about on this podcast.
Correct.
And as much as we'd want to, but and only because those people would then listen to the podcast and then we would get in trouble.
Right. Yeah. But do you have any thoughts as we do our last podcast of the year, Soren? What did this year in podcasting mean to you?
Oh, what a terrible question. You know what I've really enjoyed about this podcast this year is that there are certain things that I want to bring up and that I talk about on the podcast. And as I'm talking about them, I'm also working through them and I'm like figuring it out as I go. I assume that this is what therapy is like, where I tell you a story, but you're also very engaged and fun in your responses to it in a way that we're like, it's not just me talking to somebody. It's like, I like the things that you bring up as well. And then I'm like, I'm realizing things, not just about like the experience that I had, but I'm also like, oh shit, it's me inviting this. Like I'm inviting this into my life.
Right. This is like therapy. I'm your therapist if therapists were allowed to be funny and we're paid much less.
Yeah.
By the hour.
Ooh, boy, do we get paid less than therapists for this job.
Yeah. I think something that I have liked podcasting this year is now that it's felt more professional for me than it ever has before, because now that I live with another person, I have to like leave the room and go and podcast with the door closed, and it feels like I'm going to work in my home office, even though my home office normally is like wherever I'm sitting at any given time. But this is a moment where like, excuse me.
Yeah.
Father's podcasting now.
Yeah, don't disturb father. I also felt like it was more professional this year because there was a huge chunk of the year where we were on strike and I didn't have a job and this was my only source of income. And I thought, well, let's make this work.
There was really a pretty scary time there where I was like, if I really needed to make this my sole income,
I could do that, right?
Like, what would need to change real fast?
How do I go viral? What do I do to go viral? Dan, it's almost Christmas. Actually,
Yeah.
when this comes out, it will be still before Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or it might be Christmas Day.
Oh, this is perfect then. Okay. I want to tell you a story about this isn't a quick question or anything. I hope that it's okay. This is just going to take like an hour and a half.
Okay.
I want to tell you a story about NORAD. Do you know NORAD tracking Santa Claus? You know about that?
Yeah, dimly.
Okay. You don't know how it started though, right?
No.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is like a story that I had not heard before, and then I was just scrolling through Facebook, and I happened to get through that. I'm still subscribed to the Denver Post for whatever reason, and like they brought up this old story, and I was like, this is insane. How does nobody else know this story? So NORAD, for anyone who doesn't know, that's the North American Aerospace Defense Command. It wasn't always called that. In 1955, it was called CONAD, which is objectively a worse name. And it was it was a combination of like Canada and the United States working together. It was just for North America of like anytime like missiles were incoming, because this is also 1955. We're in the middle of the Cold War. And so like if there's a nuke on the way, like these people have to know. So that red phone that you picture from different movies, what's the one where he rides the atom? How I Learned to Love the Bomb. What is that one called?
Yeah. Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Love.
Yeah. So like you picture.
Yeah, that movie is famous for its red phone.
Hold on. That movie, they've got like a war room. There's a big map, a big translucent map up on the wall, and you see different things like little blips on it. Like you.
Yeah.
So that's how NORAD looks. NORAD looks like that. It's a giant map. It's a bunch of people scrambling around, scurrying around on the floor, and then there's a red phone there. And that red phone is connected directly to the Pentagon. And if that phone rings, it's bad news. Like that means either we heard that a nuke was launched, or we are launching a nuke. And that's the only time this phone gets used. So in 1955, in December, in Colorado Springs, this general, he's a Colonel Harry Shoup, he's the one who's in charge there, and the phone fucking rings, and everyone drops their everything that they're doing and just watches Colonel Shoup pick up this phone, and they can all hear it. And he's like, "This is Colonel Shoup," and on the other end of the phone is a child who says, "Is this Santa Claus?" And he loses his shit. He gets so angry that somebody has called, and so he just starts screaming. He's like, is this a joke? He starts looking around the room at everybody to see like who is smirking, because he wants to know now who's responsible for this. And so he just starts yelling at this person on the other end of the phone until they can clearly hear whoever's on the other end of this phone kind of like sniffling and crying. And as soon as he hears that, he's like, ho, ho, ho. Of course this is Santa Claus. Have you been a good boy? But he doesn't talk to kids well. So he's just like still barking. He's like, of course this is Santa Claus. Have you been good? And then eventually he's like, and are your parents home? And the kid's like, yeah. And she's like, can I speak to your mother, please? And she gets on the phone. Then he starts dressing her down. He's like, this line is for a very specific job. You can't ever call this line again. How did you get this number? Who put you up to this? And she's like, Sears? And so Sears had run an ad in the newspaper that was like, talk to Santa anytime. And they had given a phone number, but there was a misprint in the phone number. It was like, this is like 1955. So I guess numbers were different, but the number was ME26681.
Yeah.
And then there was a misprint in the newspaper. So it was just the wrong number, and it happened to be fucking the red phone for NORAD. And she's so apologetic and everything. He puts the phone down, this colonel. Immediately the phone rings again. He lets somebody else pick it up. It starts ringing like all night because kids are calling because they want to talk to Santa Claus. And he immediately gets he calls AT&T and he's like, we got to set up a new line because this one's compromised and we can't have kids on it all night in case there is an attack. But the next Christmas, he figures out like, this is a smart thing to do. And I think it's because he walks. This part of the story I'm more hazy on, but I think he walks back into the office on Christmas Eve, and on in like grease pencil up on the map, somebody has drawn a little Santa Claus and reindeer flying through the sky, and they're like, "We're tracking it," and he's like, "That's not a bad idea." And so he comes up with this idea that NORAD's going to be solely responsible, or CONAD is going to be solely responsible for tracking the movements of Santa Claus that night. So like, he starts doing that. And then they do open up a line that kids can call and find out everything they need to know about Santa Claus. And so anytime on like the news or wherever, like, you know that it's NORAD who's tracking Santa Claus. So for this night, they're just doing this huge fabricated thing just for children. You can find out where Santa is, and people, like millions of people, use it.
Yeah.
This guy gets remembered as the Santa Colonel. Like, even to this day, on this gruff old dude on his tombstone, it says Santa Colonel at the very bottom of it. And
wow.
Yeah, I know. And he had said, or his daughter, I guess now, his daughter did this interview with the newspaper, and they're like, well, what do you think like his message was? She's like, well, I don't know. I think he just saw an opportunity and he took it. But honestly, I think like the most important message here is just do the nice thing. Like, he could have just yelled at this kid and that would have been the end of it. And he didn't do that. Instead, it became this big project that like I paid attention to when I was a kid.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that that's how it started, that it's a guy doing a nice thing and not like the Kellogg's Corporation or Walmart, you know, like Santa sponsored by Halliburton or some shit like that. It's just some guys like, this is an easy and free thing to do, and it's okay if we don't make money doing it.
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
And that it was a fucking war hawk who decided to do it. There was this dude who was like, war was his life, and he was like, but it would be nice for the kids. Yeah. I love that that's inside everybody. That even like the harshest, brashest of us all is like, they've got that somewhere in their heart. They're like, oh no, let's just make it magic for a day. Yeah.
That is sweet.
Yeah.
I'm glad you told me that story.
I was really fascinated by it. I thought it would be enjoyable.
Yeah. Should we do the show?
Yeah, let's do the show.
We had our wonderful, irreplaceable Gabe Harder reach out to our listeners on Instagram to see if they had any questions, because it's the end of the year, and it's tradition when it's the end of the year to do a mailbag where we answer questions from the listeners. And he texted them to us, so I'm gonna look at some of these. Not answering that. Nope. I'm gonna ask you one.
Yeah.
Soren, what's your best advice for keeping up with pop culture while parenting a newborn?
Oh, great question. Okay, so here's what you do. You get a podcast with your friend.
Is the answer that you don't?
You get a podcast with your friend who doesn't have any children and isn't married. And then you rely on him exclusively to be your pop culture encyclopedia. He is going to be a hard drive of information for you, and all of it's going to come exclusively from him. You just need a Daniel O'Brien. Do you have one of those?
Yeah. Get yourself one of those. We've been looking for some competition in the podcast market.
Let's see. What do I do to keep up with pop culture? It's almost exclusively at night. The way that my schedule has shaken out, where I used to work out at night, I really was not keeping track of anything. But now I figured out that I can get up in the morning and do my workouts then. So I have maybe 45 minutes to an hour and a half every night where I'm not on the clock. I'm not beholden to anybody. And I use that time to like really try to do a deep dive into pop culture. And not in a way where like I'm like going to Reddit or anything like that. I'm going to I'm just doing broad strokes. I want like the biggest stuff. I want movies that are coming out, that type of stuff. And so that's when I will watch movies. That's when I will scroll around on my phone and like look at pop culture news and stuff. And I will figure out kind of what's going on. Here's another crazy one. Facebook.
Yep. That is in fact a crazy one.
Facebook videos. If you go to Facebook videos and you just start scrolling through it, it's trickling from all the other social networks. Like, you're getting everything from TikTok. You're getting all the videos that ended up just on Twitter somehow by themselves, Instagram. Like, it's all coming to Facebook. For whatever reason, they're still pulling all that in. And you're getting like a big scatter plot of what's going on in pop culture just by scrolling through this. That's how I know about things like Well, who is that? No, it turns out I don't know. Who is that rapper, Dan, that you told me the name of and we both thought it was an insane name? Fuck.
Nope.
Never mind. We won't use that one. That's how I found out about like uwu girls. Remember when I explained to you what those were?
That's right, and that's already out of my head.
That's where I find out about different beefs between rappers. Like that's where I find out all of my pop culture information comes exclusively from fucking the most ancient of all of the social media networks. Because for whatever reason, all those rivers still lead to that one watering hole.
It's got, and the good news is Facebook is found a way to monetize all the creators of that content, I'm sure.
No, that's still it's in the works. It's in the works.
Okay.
They promise that it's in the works, but video's doing great on Facebook. Keep making videos for Facebook. It is the front page of the internet. It's everybody's saying it. That would be my answer to that question.
All right.
Let me ask you one, Daniel, that's specific for you.
Okay.
I don't even know what this one means.
I mean, I have one that's specific to me.
Okay, which one?
That I can update. It's how is Jackson doing? We haven't heard anything about him in a while. Jackson is my dog, and there's lots to say about him. He's such a good little guy. The the bits of devastating news is one of the last times I made an appointment to drop him off at my kennel that I've used a bunch of times when we take trips. This is the first time that they were like, "Oh, I see he's at an age now where we have to do I have to do a wellness check with our vets to make sure that he can come in and stay. I'm sure he'll be fine, but it's just something that we need to do." I was like, "Well, it's never happened before." And they're like, "Oh, it's just with senior dogs. He's now entered that realm
Oh my God.
of senior dog." Which is, you wouldn't know it to look at him. He's still got all the energy. He's still jumping up and down. Everyone who meets him assumes he's a puppy or a year old or so. He's going to be 12 in March. And that qualifies him as a senior dog. And that means, it might mean changing out his diet. And that's all stuff that I ignored for a very long time because, because he's a puppy, and I'm glad that he's as healthy as he is, but just that label senior dog is uncomfortable. And the other bit of devastating news is it's not even close how much more he loves Shay than he loves me. It's like all I had going for me for the longest time was just how devoted he and I were to each other and how like strong this bond was. And now he if she goes to the bathroom, he will just look off at the door to where she is and wondering when she's gonna come back. And he'll when she goes to work for the day, he'll be upset that it's just us. It's just the guy who raised him and cleaned his poop for over a decade. She's just in a very short amount of time ingratiated herself to him, and I don't think there's any coming back from it.
I think you're getting a very good and micro glimpse of what it would be like to be the parent of a teenager. I think about this when I look at my children sleeping, and I'm like, some point you're gonna date someone that I hate.
Yeah.
Someone that I can't stand. And you're going to be so in love with this person. And I'm just going to have to fucking sit there and deal with it. And also, I'm going to be chopped liver for sure. That's a given. That's what happens with your parents. You get to a certain age and you're like, yes, I know you raised me, but that was a very embarrassing time and I don't choose to think about it.
Right. I also can see from the parent side of things how gendered stereotypes begin to form, because I'm not resentful of their bond or anything like that, but I see that he so clearly prefers her to me, and I still need a function in this triad. I shall be the disciplinarian. I will be the one, whenever someone needs to tell him that he's in trouble or tell him no, then it'll be me. And in my head, that is just as important as giving him treats.
Why doesn't he love me?
He needs both to thrive.
Yep, that's certainly what happens with the parenting. And then you'll fight about it. You fight about how, why am I always the bad guy or the bad woman? All right, I have a question.
I'll do a fun thing. I'll take him to the beach, and he'll wonder why Shay is not there. And be like, well, then we're not going to the beach anymore. I'm fun.
Have fun, or we're going home. Just turn it around. Turn it around. Whatever that means. Okay. Someone has asked. Fluke MC4 has asked, how aware of Cracked are your current coworkers? I'll answer this first, Daniel. Not at all. Like vaguely. Some of them have like a moderate understanding of what happened, but they are, I will say to a T, none of them are happy about it. It makes them all very unhappy to think about. They don't like that I worked in the internet. The internet to them is gross. And they also don't understand it. And that's part of the reason they don't like it. Like they occasionally, like one of them will find me on Twitter, not anymore, but would find me on Twitter or something. And they'd be like, why do you have 73,000 followers? Or like whatever it was. And I'd be like, oh, I used to do this thing. It was this, or like we'd be in public and somebody'd be like, hey, I'm a big Cracked fan. Well, I'm a big After Hours fan. And I'd be like, okay, thanks. And they'd be like, what the fuck was that? And I'm like, oh, it's just this internet show I used to do. And like, they immediately want to hate it. And that's fine. I don't totally know where that's born from. Maybe because I'm so subjective about the internet and I don't have those same sort of hangups about it, but they do not care for it.
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't really know. There are some like younger people on staff who certainly were familiar with Cracked and After Hours and have said nice things about it. As far as the writer's room goes, I think some are dimly aware of it. It's also, I mean, I'm in a writer's room with people who were at College Humor and people who were at The Onion and people who were at Clickhole. So I'm sure there's some overlap there of like, oh yeah, I'm vaguely aware of this thing that you did because we were all doing roughly the same thing at roughly the same time. But insofar as like the period of our lives where we were on camera personalities and recognizable faces and bodies that were like a draw for audiences at conventions and stuff in person, I don't know that is common knowledge among my coworkers, and I'm certainly not doing anything to change that. I mean, on purpose, because I would be miserable if someone else on staff was explaining how big College Humor was in the day. Yeah. Like there's nothing sadder to me than like me trying to stand up and explain that Cracked was a big deal and my role in that big deal and all that. So I don't volunteer the information and tend to downplay whenever it's brought up.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would never tell anyone because that's all. Yeah. That's a really pathetic place to be coming from. You're like, I used to be important on the internet is a really tough sell. I never would tell anyone, but it would come when it did come up and like people would find out and I would have to explain it. It's the same as like explaining this podcast. I get the same response. Some of them know that there's a podcast. None of them listen to it, but occasionally a new one will find out that I have a podcast. And there's just like this general distaste I see on their face. Yeah. We're like, well, you don't, because it's not for you.
Because it's impossible to explain what this podcast is to someone who doesn't know us without digging into the Cracked of it all and the history of it all and the personalities that we built. And that's not fun to hear about.
No.
I was thinking that I briefly thought that none of my coworkers resented hearing about Cracked the way that yours did. But then I remembered right when I started here, one of the other writers was like, yeah, it was either his girlfriend or a relative or someone in his life was like, yeah, when they heard that you were going to be writing here, they were so fucking excited that Dan O'Brien from Cracked was going to be writing here. And I was like, oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm so lucky. It's blah, blah, blah. Like, whatever faux humble bullshit I was putting. And then I could see it in his eyes that it was like, this is not a compliment from him. This is from someone else, and he doesn't like it.
This on. You know, I used to work for a company that was subscription based. I won't say the name of it, but the way that it worked was we knew that people would forget about their subscriptions and we counted on it. We wanted them to forget about their subscriptions because it was yearly updated. So what inevitably would happen is that it would update. They would get a little notification that it updated, not before, keep in mind, so that then they would see that and they would go, oh, I forgot to cancel the subscription. Well, I have it for a year. I'll just keep it for the rest of the year. And then they'd forget again the next year. It was diabolical. And that's pretty much every subscription-based thing you've got. They're all working on that same premise. But you don't have to fall for it anymore. If I asked you right now how many subscriptions you had, would you be able to list all of them that you're paying for? Probably not. But Rocket Money can help you figure out which ones you're paying for that you don't want anymore. If you would have asked me this question before I started using Rocket Money, I would have said, I could maybe tell you how many I have, but I would have been wrong. Rocket Money has told me. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills. I can see all of my subscriptions in one place, and if I see something I don't want, I can cancel it with a tap. I don't ever have to interact with those people ever again. Rocket Money does it on my behalf. They do the dirty work. I never have to get on the phone with customer service. They'll even try to get you a refund for the last couple of months that you wasted forgetting that you even had this service. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has helped save its members an average of $720 a year, with over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/QQ. That's rocketmoney.com/QQ. rocketmoney.com/QQ. I have another one here, Dan, that I want to answer. Is that all right?
Okay, great.
Z_Angler has asked, what's a dish or meal you've always wanted to make but never have, and why? Because I have one in mind here, but I'll give you some time to think about it.
Sure.
Beef Wellington.
Beef Wellington is my answer.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, wait. Tell me why Beef Wellington is the one that you've never made or maybe will never make.
It seems very hard.
Yeah.
There's a baking element to it, and I never trust myself with anything that requires like baking, and you have to get that like bread crust around it just right. It is also a very expensive dish to do well.
Yes.
Are those your reasons also?
Some of them. I also don't eat meat. Don't eat red meat.
Right.
I could watch people prepare Beef Wellington all day long. I told you about like Maddie Madison and like these other cooking shows that I watch. I love watching people make Beef Wellington. It's gorgeous. It's like the process is beautiful. It's, for anyone who doesn't know, it's sirloin. No, what is it? What is the fucking middle of a Beef Wellington? It's some type of meat, some type of cow, some hunk of cow. And you roll it up and you can put you can tie it up. You can keep it tied up if you want to. And you're going to like sear it first. And you're not cooking the middle yet. You're just sort of like searing the outside. And then you take those cuts off. You're going to slather it in mustard. Then you're going to put like a mushroom paste.
Mix.
Make a mushroom mix. And you put that on some phyllo dough or like some dough that you also made, like a puff pastry dough. And then you wrap the puff pastry dough around it. And so you have what is this giant like meat Twinkie, like this giant, it looks like a loaf of bread, but it has a whole hunk of beef in it that's covered in mustard and mushrooms, which sounds unbelievable to me. I've never had a Beef Wellington either, but
my uncle used to make it for Christmas.
He did?
Or Christmas Eve dinner. It was one of those things. It's so good, and I would look forward to it every year. And every year I would look at it and be like, I can make one of those on my own. And then I'd go home and look at the recipe and stuff and like watch videos and like, no, I don't think I can.
There's
I think
much.
if I get this wrong, it's going to be really tough to make. It's going to take a long time, be very frustrating. And if it doesn't come out right, then I'll burn my house down because it's such a time suck.
It is. It takes so much time. You're right that there's a baking element, which is a little terrifying to it as well. Everything about it looks delicious. It looks incredible, but it's not something I will ever in my life eat. And so it's not something in my life I'll ever make. Yorkshire pudding is right up there with it. Yorkshire, do you know what those are?
No.
Yorkshire pudding, so you make a roast and then you're using the pan drippings and you're making a sort of a gravy out of that, but you're also making a dough. You're including the pan drippings and like the blood from this into a dough that then turns into like a puff pastry that has a cup in the middle of it. And you put the gravy in the cup of the pastry. And I have had that. I had that one as a child because the Marshes, the same people I mentioned in the previous podcast, they would make this all the time. And it's so good. But man, is it tough. It's a hard one to get right.
Man. I got a question. Will you do more collaborations with David Wong?
Who?
That's from Pork O'Tyler on Instagram. I would personally love to. I like there's interest in that. Jason's one of our favorite people to talk to. Historically, he's been here once a year when it's time to promote a book.
Yeah.
So I think if we decided to pull the trigger and say once a month or once a quarter, we're going to have him on, I would like to do the right thing and pay him for his time, because I think podcast economy is one of those things that a few shows are aware that you should be paying guests, but it's sort of been the industry's been a little bit late to the game on that. And just coming from where Soren and I both come from, where we saw early days of the internet where just time and content was so undervalued for freelancers, I think now that we are in a position where we can have an early say in that conversation, I would want to figure out what an hour of his time is worth and make sure he's compensated fairly, and that like we as a company are in a position to pay money to people. If we can pay people, that'd be news to me. I haven't.
I'd love to get paid.
I'd also, as long as we're paying Jason, I would love to get paid.
Yeah, we would have Jason on whenever. I mean, Jason's always welcome on the show because he's so fascinating too. It also gives us a lot of breathing room because he's got big opinions about everything under the sun. And it's always fascinating. Like he's always got an interesting opinion. And so we can just let him go. We just turn him loose on the podcast and we don't have to talk.
Yeah. But I think also more than him, there's something that I've been thinking about if we ever did expand to guests on this show. I was toying with a question that I wanted to talk to Soren about, which was what is the most accurate depiction of your job in a movie, which we'll still do as an episode at some point. And as I was sketching it out, my brain was thinking that we would divide it between, like, I would talk about the most accurate depiction of people who write for a late night show, and Soren would focus on sitcom writing, and then I'm sure it would devolve into, like, the best depictions of writing on screen, because that's also a rich vein. But I at the end of that day, it's still just two writers talking about writing and movies about writing, and I'm so much more interested in talking to someone who can tell me like the best depiction of a lawyer on screen or a police officer on screen or a doctor on screen. Like, cause I've gotten so much insight from my mom, who was a labor and delivery nurse and a school nurse, just about what shows get wrong about the dynamics between doctors and nurses. And it's very fascinating. And like, we hear so much more from actors and writers about things than we do from like actual people who do actual jobs, that I'm much more interested in turning that job question on anyone who is not in this industry, who can say like, no, this is what, listen, as a Batman, that's not what it's like.
Yeah, I would love to know in terms of like doctor shows, like which, in the process of them solving, like housing out a problem, like which show is actually doing the best job. I would be furious to find out it was like Grey's Anatomy. They're like, no, this is the one that seems most likely.
Yeah. No, it's really sexy and it requires geniuses.
We're all having sex in beds that somebody just died in and has been moved out from. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Jason should be on the show more. I agree.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, this question is from P. Garaventa. Asked a lot of questions, by the way. P. Garaventa's got very curious about us. What's something you did as a kid or young adult you can't do anymore? I was just thinking about this the other day. I used to be able to do a Kip Up, and that means that I'd be lying on the ground. It's just this cool, fun thing I could do where I was on my back, and I would push my legs up in the air, kick them straight up in the air, and push with my hands behind my shoulders, and then jump up onto my feet. And
yes, I could do that too. You've seen this in movies. It's very cool.
It's a very cool, fun thing to see somebody just do out of nowhere. It's like, and one of those things that's as showy as it is, like as much as it's a show off thing, it's also very charming. So it always works.
Yeah.
And I used to love doing them. And I tried doing one recently for my kids, and it was humiliating. Like I got the kick didn't go anywhere. Basically, just my bat came off the ground and then fell right back onto the ground and knocked the wind out of myself. As my kids were like,
Yeah.
is that what you're trying to do?"
Yes, very impressive, Daddy. That's
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're right. No one could defeat you like you. I could do a Kip Up for years. It's something that, like, my bones think I still could, but my brain knows if I can't, that could be so much damage for so long. Like, I know that the risk reward, I've crunched those numbers, and if I do something that like wrenches my back or my neck or any other part of me, because at this age anything could hurt anything, and it was like, no, then if I could land the wrong way and just not be able to turn my head for a while or not be able to run for a while, and I don't want to risk it.
Yeah, you got out of a car and broke your foot.
That's right.
This is like, this thing is like tough on your body. This is like a full, like, springing up your body and then putting as much force on several different muscles at once at the exact same time as like hard as you can. And so the fact that you don't pull something every single time is pretty much a miracle. I used to also be able to, there was not even that long a period of time, I could do a backflip for like maybe a year. And the reason that I stopped was because I tried doing it at the beach once in the sand, and that was a huge mistake. And I hit my head, and I heard a crack in my neck, and I said, "I think this is too dangerous for me. I'm not ever going to do this again." But there was like a summer or like a whole year at school where I was like, I was fucking backflipping off everything. You couldn't stop me from backflipping. Once I knew how to do it, I was going to do it all the time. Which every time that I see a football player like gets in the end zone and does a backflip, I'm like, yeah, because you can. That's exactly right.
Do it at press conferences. Why are you why are you waiting for a football? We're all gonna die.
Yeah, dance, like, even though you got a wedding on a dance floor, I'm like, yep, gonna do a backflip here. I've already made the decision. And then I gave up on it. That was the one that was, when I could do it, it was my superpower, and I wanted everyone to know.
Yeah. I think the only other thing from childhood that I would like, the very obvious things of like eating whatever I wanted, and not just in terms of like eating and not gaining weight. Just like dairy. I would love to eat dairy again with abandon.
You've done things like where you take a medication right before you eat dairy, right? And that doesn't work either?
Yeah, not really, no.
That's such a bummer. I'm sorry, man.
Here's this one. This one will be quick from Dante's Knicks. Daniel. And then they said SEA JFK. So I'm assuming this is a flight from Seattle to JFK. Mm-hmm. Said, we locked eyes. I pretend not to know you. You're welcome. And I just want to let this person know that was not me. That's every once in a while, someone on Twitter will tag me and be like, bro, is that you in Little Rock, Arkansas right now at the Barnes & Noble? And I'm like,
nope.
No, it's not. Don't bother that person.
Also, don't take a picture of them because I will be insulted. I'm trying to see if maybe he means something else. Are you sure he's not saying that you at one point made publicly the assertion that Seattle was better than John F. Kennedy Jr.?
I'm trying to think if I never would have said that JFK Airport was better than Seattle Airport, because I don't like JFK and I've never been to Seattle's airport. I've never been to Seattle. Is there a president whose initials are SEA? No.
Son Adams.
Nope. I got another one.
Okay.
That I think might alienate people.
Great. Do it.
Because I'm not going to answer it correctly. Favorite candy or candies to eat when you guys are watching movies?
I think we could answer this for each other, honestly.
I don't know that you can answer mine, because mine is, I'm going to, my movie snack is not candy.
Okay. This gets more complicated. Because I was really banking on gummy bears or gummy worms.
Gummy bears, gummy worms, or Twizzler nibs if I'm doing a candy for sure.
Okay, so now I got to do a movie. Do you think you could do my candy, Dan? I have mentioned it. And
I know you have.
I think you could do it. Let me see if I can think of yours real quick.
It's not. No, I'm not going to get yours. It's not Milk Duds.
It's Charleston Shoes.
Charleston Shoes. That's right. I used to love Charleston Shoes so much.
Oh, that's great. Man, who was I telling about Charleston Shoes? And they're like, "This is the most disgusting candy there is in the world." They like
No, those people are nuts.
It's delicious. It's so wonderful.
So good. You could also put them in the freezer, and they're so great. Out
Even
of the freezer.
better out of the freezer. So and like I don't give a shit about flavor either. Like you give me a Charleston Chew, I won't even look at the flavor because it's all the same to me. They come in Neapolitan flavor, so it's just a strawberry. There's a vanilla. There's a chocolate, and it's the longest, most basic candy bar you can imagine. It's just like a chewy nougat with chocolate around it, and it's a weird long shape, and they rule. And you can get little ones.
It scares people off because the packaging does certainly look like this is a 1930s candy.
Yeah, they have not updated anything.
It may as well be, but I love it. I'm super happy about it.
And some movie theaters, they do little nib versions. They do like a Charleston Chews in a box, and it's just basically small Charleston Chews, and it's the best.
My go-to movie snack is popcorn. I'm a big popcorn guy.
Get out of town. You eat popcorn at movies?
Oh yeah, we'll like make serious popcorn at home for movies, and there's like a bunch of, if we're not making it on the stove, there's like this special, I think it's called Lesser Good or Lesser God brand of popcorn that is vegan friendly, and all of their flavors are good. They've got like a sriracha one, they've got a fake cheddar one, and they've got a whole bunch of, they've got a chocolate candy cane one that I don't really fuck with, but almost all of the other ones are just pure delicious. But here's where I'm going to lose some people. My ideal snack at a movie theater is popcorn, with or without butter. I don't necessarily need the butter on there at this point. It's just too greasy.
I'm reeling.
But I'll
I'm
salt
reeling
it.
right now. So you're telling me that you eat
And then-
popcorn at movies?
Once I get the salt on it, I'll take a couple of those little plastic ramekins, maybe 3 or 4 of them, and I'll fill them with mustard. And I'll dip the popcorn in the mustard the whole time. That's where I feel like I'm losing people. Popcorn is not the easiest thing in the world to dip.
No.
So yeah, I'm getting the tips of my fingers covered in mustard.
Yeah.
The whole movie.
Also, I don't think popcorn can stand up to mustard. Mustard is such a sharp and strong taste, and popcorn is very mild.
That's right.
See,
I'm mostly just
eating
eating
mustard.
mustard. And I love it.
You're really what you're doing in a movie is you're dipping your fingers in mustard and eating mustard
Correct.
off your fingers.
That's right.
That's your snack.
Because sometimes the popcorn will get stuck in the mustard swamp
You just
and
leave
not
it.
come out,
Yeah, you leave
like
it.
the horse in Neverending Story. And I'm just like, that's okay.
I wasn't what I was here for anyway.
Yeah.
I came for the delectable treat.
And I bet if someone was like, they make a mustard flavored popcorn. No, thank you. I don't want that. I want the setup that I have right now.
So as soon as you said
And I
that,
have to look like a lunatic carrying like 4 ramekins of mustard because they're such shallow things.
as soon as you said it, I was like, yeah, well, they make powdered mustard. Surely they can suggest that to him. And I was like, no. There's something else happening here. There's something else that he wants from this experience. Also, wet things, other than butter, I guess, wet things on your popcorn is like a real bad idea. Like that, you have to get that down the gullet so fast before the popcorn essentially disintegrates.
Correct. But that's why I can't remember which of the podcasts I listened to just covered the same territory, probably Doughboys, but I am team eat your movie snack as fast as possible.
Yeah.
And then be done probably by the middle of the previews. I don't need to eat during the movie. I get my snack and I eat it while it's fresh, and then I leave a bunch of spilled mustard ramekins and popcorn kernels on the seat next to me, like a very confusing crime scene to whatever poor usher is going to come in after me and clean up.
Try and piece together this story. What happened? I took my son to a Chargers Broncos game recently, and he's kind of understands football. He's got like a pretty basic understanding of the game, because there's a lot of times where like something happens, he's like, and everyone goes nuts, and he's like, what happened? And the way that I keep him involved in the game is that, or like going to these stadiums all the time, is that we will go get as many treats as he wants, as many little snacks as he wants. And so we inevitably get like nachos, then we're going to get popcorn, then we're going to get some sort of sugary treat like Sour Patch Kids or something fun. And I I will eat all these things. And it's like really the only time that I'm eating all of these things. And holy shit, they are so good. These treats are so good. Popcorn is not a meal or a snack that I eat ever. I have not eaten popcorn in a very long time. And we got this bucket as big as my head. And I was like, there's no butter on it or anything. It's just popcorn. And I was like, okay, well, I'll have some of this, I guess. So you don't have to eat the whole thing. And by 5 minutes later, I'm just handful by handful, just like shoveling this into my mouth. Like, this is manna from the gods. It's so good.
Yeah. Thank you all, listeners, for all of your questions. Sorry we didn't get to all of them, but we'll wait till next year.
You can follow Daniel on Twitter at DOB_Inc. You can follow me over on Blue Sky at Soren.buoy. You can follow Quick Question at QQ_Soren and Dan. That's only on Twitter. You can email us at QQwithSorenandDaniel@gmail.com. We've got a pretty lively Instagram all of a sudden. A lot of the clips of Dan and I doing this podcast, videos of us, are up on Instagram. You can go to QQ_with_Soren_and_Daniel. We have a Patreon, which is Patreon/Quick Question. If you like our song, our theme song, that's by Me Rex. You can find their music at merex.bandcamp.com. Also, we have a sound engineer, an editor, a producer in Gabe Harder. You will find him nowhere, and that's by design. Other than that, you can find videos of Daniel and I at youtube.com. You ever been there? /@QQ Podcast. You will find a couple of podcasts that we did that were not live. I always want to say live. A couple of podcasts that we did where you see our faces as we're talking and laughing at each other's jokes and occasionally making kind of like sneers for some reason. I don't know why I'm doing that. Okay, have fun.
All right. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. Bye.
Bye.
I've got a quick question for you, alright? I wanna hear your thoughts, I wanna know what's on your mind. I've got a quick question for you, alright? The answer's not important, I'm just glad that we could talk tonight. So what's your favourite? How did you get? When will I be remembered? Was it ever? Where did all the right on? Oh, forget it. Soren, Bowie, Daniel O'Brien. Two best friends and comedy writers. If there's an answer, they're gonna find it. I think you'll have a great time here.